Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to the US, but we're going to return to a state that hasn't featured on the channel in quite some time, and we're also going to go to another brewery that has never featured on the channel before. Now, these guys, from what I understand, are a relatively new addition to the local beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves in a very short space of time. And the beer itself is a style that these guys have become particularly well known for, and it's one that I found quite randomly actually. I noticed it in the beer fridge, it caught my eye because of the name, and then I was told that this is a very, very good brewery that I should check out. So yeah, I kind of thought, bugger it, why not? But that's kind of how it goes sometimes when you encounter breweries that you don't know. You're attracted to a particular beer on the basis of the name or the artwork, and that was certainly the case here. But needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to the state of Florida in the southeastern US. We're going to go toward Miami in the southeastern part of the state, but we're going to go a little bit to the west of the main city to a wee place called Doral, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Tripping Animals Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Who Loves Orange Soda. It comes in at 6% ABV, and as the name might suggest, this one is a sour ale with oranges added to it. But the reason, of course, that this one kind of caught my eye was because of that name, Who Loves Orange Soda, and everybody knows that Kel loves orange soda. I used to love watching Keenan and Kel on the TV when I was a bit younger. I can't remember how long ago it was that I used to watch Keenan and Kel, but I always thought that Keenan and Kel was really funny, and this one just kind of caught my eye. And like I say, sometimes you come across breweries you don't know and they've got random beers like this, and that's just how it goes. So this is going to be my very first review of Tripping Animals. But this is a brewery that was recommended to me by the legendary Massive Matthew Dapkins of Massive Beer Reviews. It was him actually that bought me this can. We were in a pub that he wanted to go and visit for quite some time, and I saw this in the beer fridge and he picked it up for me. So yeah, big thank you to Matt for making this review possible. I don't know if he'll watch this one, but yeah, hopefully he remembers that this is one of the beers that he picked up for me, because he understood the reference as well. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Tripping Animals Brewing Company. Very first time these guys are featuring on the channel, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of different beers from different countries, and there are many different lists there these days, but you will find this one in the American playlist. And do check out the others as well, because there are some really great things in there. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and go on to the brewery history section. So, to tell you a little bit about Tripping Animals Brewing Company for the first time. So, as I mentioned to you already, Tripping Animals are based in a little place called Doral in Florida, which is just in the western part of Miami. I don't know if you could call it a suburb or its own township or whatever, but it's in the western part of Miami in any case. And this company was founded back in 2018. So the four co-owners or co-founders of this brewery are Daniel Cochran, Iker Elorriaga, Ignacio Montenegro, and Juan Manuel Torres. And I do apologise for any bad Spanish pronunciations there. I'm not overly familiar with the language. But they apparently began homebrewing together back in 2011 in Caracas in Venezuela, but they struggled to get hold of the ingredients that they needed to kind of fulfill their hobby, and they were severely hampered as well by the rapid inflation that has taken place in the country over the last 10 years, or even more than that, to be honest. But Ignacio had actually studied in St. Louis in Missouri, and he believed that they should take their home brewing passion up to the US. And so they chose Doral as their location because the beer scene in nearby Miami was still relatively small at the time, but they also wanted to move there because Doral has a really high number of Venezuelan immigrants. Apparently it's the highest per capita in the whole of the US, so they felt that going there would feel like home to them, and the whole team went on to relocate to the US in 2014. But this brewery, like I mentioned, built a very good reputation for themselves in a very short space of time. Initially, they were focusing on IPAs and lagers, but then apparently they had a sort of tap takeover with some Burley Oak beers, and this was a bit of a game changer for them, and they began to invest a lot of time in producing sour beers because they felt this fit with their local area, because Florida is, of course, known for its fruit production, oranges, peaches, I think mangoes are pretty big, and passion fruits as well in Florida as well. It's a very big fruit producing state down there. But the brewery itself is located in an industrial unit of 15,000 square feet. This includes a 2,400 square foot tap room which opens every day, and they're operating a 15-barrel brew kit, which is roughly 2,500 litres per brew for those of you who use the proper metric system, not the American Freedom Units system, of course. But yeah, 2,500 litres per brew, there or thereabouts. But over the last few years, they've continued to increase their fermentation capacity and develop new recipes. And like I said, they have built a very, very good reputation for themselves across the entire US. A lot of breweries were kind of scrambling to collaborate with these guys, the likes of Finback and Equilibrium and other half, and all the really well-known American craft breweries were wanting to collaborate with these guys. So as I say, very, very well respected these days. But as of September 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 430 different beers according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Tripping Animals Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's everything we need to see on the brewery history section. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see you've got like a rainforest tree frog on there, an orange one obviously. Stuck to the front of a Fanta can, but they can't show that for copyright reasons. But there you can see plain silver top on the can. I should point out as well that this is 1 American pint, 473 millilitres or 16 fluid ounces if you want to use the Freedom Unit system, as they often like to do over here. As we said earlier, this one is called Who Loves Orange Soda. We all know that Kel loves orange soda. But yeah, this is nice. I should also point out too that it comes from their Fresco series, which is just a series of kind of fruity sour beers. But yeah, again, a big thank you to Matt for making this review possible. He bought me this can, and I think he was quite keen to see my review of it because he's tried a number of things from Tripping Animals down in Florida. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see what the beer is all about. It's not often in Europe that you come across beers that are orange sours. There's a lot of berry sours and passion fruit sours and things like that. But yeah, orange sours are not madly common. But I will say straight away that upon pouring this, it does remind me of the the Iron Brew sour from Vault City back home in the motherland of Scotland. Vault City, of course, a wonderful sour beer brewery from Edinburgh. So yeah, this one contains a whole host of different orange things there. Orange candied sugar, orange candy, and all of these sort of things. But yeah, safe to say, didn't make sense to say that. But yeah, when this beer poured, before the head disappears, it came out with a half finger of a frothy, kind of orange tinted, cream coloured head. That's fading away to be a very thin foamy layer, and you've just got that kind of ring around the edge of the glass now. But you can see the colour of this beer is lovely, very kind of bright, almost orange skin, orange peel colour actually, which is to be expected. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts you put into the beer, will affect its colour as well. And when it comes to the kind of modern sour beers like this, that is obviously going to play quite a bit of a role. So a lot of the colour in this one will no doubt be coming from the orange candies and the orange peel and oranges and stuff that have been put in there. So yeah, this should be quite an interesting one. But yeah, lovely kind of almost West Coast IPA level amber colour coming out of this one. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones coming up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, as I say, it does look pretty damn nice actually. Yeah, I don't know if we really need to say much more about the appearance of this one. The only other thing that we could add is that the beer has a little bit of that kind of natural haze to it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, pretty much as you would expect from an orange sour, to be honest with you. So I think we can take a little look at the aroma now and see what this beer is all about. I'm really curious about this one, as I say. Oh yeah. Now, as I've often said in reviews of, you know, like Elma Livin from Sweden, Fermenterarna, these kind of guys, the modern sour beer breweries, you know, Holy Goat and Vault City from the motherland of Scotland, a lot of these kind of modern sour beers are quite simple in terms of their aroma, but generally speaking, they're very similar. They're very simple as well in terms of their. They're very similar as well, very simple and similar in terms of their flavour. So you know, if these beers are well done, they're always just really nice to drink, and I think that's probably going to be the case with this one. I'm curious to see exactly what sour beer category this fits into, because in Europe, you know, smoothie sours are very popular, but I've noticed over here in the US that kind of kettle sours are still very popular actually. So yeah, a few things to think about when it comes to this beer. But yeah, this one is, it smells quite like a sort of candy sour, to be honest with you. I've had 1 or 2 candy sours, and I have to admit I'm not the greatest fan of them, or at least the ones I've had so far. But this one comes across as very, very sweet. But you do have to remember that generally speaking, the American palate is a lot sweeter than the European palate. So yeah, but needless to say, this beer is quite highly rated, and it does smell pretty nice. It does smell a little bit like what I would call in Scotland orangeade, Fanta as well, but maybe a bit more natural than Fanta. Fanta's got a lot of that kind of fake orange kind of flavouring aroma to it. I've got a very good friend from Chile who is a food scientist, and I'm sure she would agree with me on that. But aroma-wise, it's very much like a kind of candied orange that you get from this one. But yeah, I think we covered everything we need to say about the appearance. Yeah, kind of natural haze to it, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass. And as I said, the aroma, if we move on to that now, the aroma of this one is quite interesting. I mean, you get a little bit of a bready backbone to this one, you know, like kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. There's a little touch of cracker, and just a wee bit of a kind of, you know, it has got a little bit of that soft white bready character to it. So yeah, soft white bread in there, maybe a little touch of a sweeter wholemeal brown bread as well. Yeah, so wholemeal brown bread, soft white bready character, and yeah, there's a little bit of a, there is a little bit of a kind of oaty note in there as well. I'll be very curious to know whether there's a bit of oat in this, because yeah, above the white bread you can smell a little bit of this kind of creamy, oaty, almost very slightly yogurty character, but I would say that that's quite minimal, and usually when you've got this kind of oaty, yogurty character, that's an indicator of it being a smoothie sour. But from the aroma, you can tell that this one isn't really a smoothie sour at all. It is more like a kind of candy or kettle sour, this beer, because it's just a bit too light, and yeah, it is really just a little bit kind of too light and things in terms of that aroma profile. But yeah, aroma-wise, there's a little bit on top of the bready character, you do get a little bit of this kind of McVitie's Digestive biscuity type character. So yeah, a little bit of McVitie's Digestive biscuit, a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch. Yeah, I think the way that goes together is quite nice. There is just a little touch of that brown kind of sugary note in this one. So yeah, good little bit of bread, good little bit of kind of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, bit of bread crust. I don't know if there's really much more to say about the kind of malty backbone of this beer, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. On the hoppy side of things, I'm very curious about this. There is a little bit of a debate among sour beer brewers these days as to whether you should actually add hops into beer. Now, what they used to do back in the day was add older hops into the likes of, Flanders Radios, like Rodenbach, or some of the lambic beers, the Heuses and the Framboise and all these kind of things. And the idea behind adding the older hops was that if you added older hops in, you still got the complexity of the flavour, but some of the alpha acid potency had dropped away, and that meant that the sour category would not be overpowered by the hoppiness in the beer. So these days there is a little bit of a debate among sour beer brewers whether you should really use hops in these beers to add the complexity of the flavour, or whether it's even worth doing it. For example, in Sweden, the likes of Elma-Livin, Fermenterarna, Duck Pond, the breweries who are really well known for the modern sour beers, the smoothie sours, they don't use hops in their beers. Whereas if you go to Scotland and you've got the likes of Holy Goat and Vault City, they do use hops in their sour beers to give you that little bit of complexity of flavour. So it really just depends on the mentality that the brewer decides to take. From the aroma of this one, I think there's not hops in this one, because the green component, I think, comes across as very sort of smooth, and it may well just be a little bit of a placebo effect. I mean, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, teeny bit of floral note, and a little bit of grassiness. But I really do think that the green component in this beer is more placebo than actual flavour and aroma, if that makes sense. So just bear that in mind when you take in the aroma of this beer. Let's just have a little look at the fruity side of things and the adjuncty side of things then, because we've not really covered that yet in the aroma profile of this one. And obviously, you do get this really like orange sherbety type character out of this one. It smells like, Fanta, which you would expect. It has got a little bit of a sort of apricot-y, peachy type character to it. It's kind of like a lemony. There's a sort of lemon sherbety type note line under this one as well, but it's like an orange sherbet. It's kind of everything you'd expect in that sense, because there were different types. There was oranges added into this one, orange candy, and a few other things. So yeah, the whole idea of this beer was simply to be an orange bomb and to taste like what I would call orangeade. One of the things I have found really funny when I've been here in the US this time is just how orange the colour of certain things are. If you eat Cheetos, the orange colour of these things is like radioactive orange, and the Fanta as well is like a radioactive orange. I think the orange I think there's a lot of colours in the US that are banned in Europe that are not banned over here. So yeah, that's quite an interesting thing. So yeah, that's been a funny experience when I've been over here in the US this time for the first time in a couple of years. But as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience. But I think we should try this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Who Loves Orange Soda. As I say, everyone knows Kel loves orange soda. A 6% orange sour beer from Tripping Animals Brewing Company in Doral, near Miami in Florida. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. I'm going to say straight away, I'm pretty sure this is a candied sour, but it's really pretty nice. The candy sours that I've had before, and I had one from Salama Brewing in Finland. It was that one that had the kind of Ghostbusters thing on the front of it. I just wasn't a great fan of that. But this one's actually really nice. It kind of, I would say that this one straddles the border between being like a kettle sour and a candy sour, but it works, as I say, very, very well. Yeah. It does pretty much just taste like orangeade, orange soda, as Kel always said. They've done a really good job of this, and you know, if these guys can, if these guys can produce sour beers like this, I would love to see them collaborate with Holy Goat, and I'd love to see them do a collaboration with Holy Goat and Vault City from back home in the motherland of Scotland. You know, I think these two breweries would get on really well. This actually does, it's not as kind of candied as the Iron Brew sour from Vault City, but it's you know, it has the same kind of vibe, if that makes sense. This one's a lot more orangey than Iron Brew is, but Iron Brew is a sort of candy floss flavoured soda drink, if you can, to put it in the American context. But this is a lovely beer, this one. It gets a big thumbs up from me, and if this is the kind of stuff that they're producing, you can see why folk would rave a little bit about Tripping Animals. It's a really good beer. Yeah, that is pretty damn good. I'm going to enjoy sipping on this for the next hour or two. But yeah, it's, as I said, with these sour beers, a lot of the time they're very simple in terms of their flavour, and a lot of the time they're very simple in terms of their flavour and aroma profile, but they're just really nice to drink, and this beer certainly fits into that category. So yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe the flavour for you a little bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, you have that lovely kind of, the middle third of your palate, you've got that lovely kind of fresh, wholemeal, brown bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more, there's a little touch of like a woody character comes out of it, and it's maybe just got a little bit of vanilla sitting above it. Yeah. So, little, as I say, wholemeal brown bready backbone, wholemeal brown bready bread crust backbone, I should say. Then as you move further forward, a little bit of that woody character, a little bit of vanilla sitting above it, and then you start to get the actual bready notes out of the beer. So you've got a kind of wholemeal, kind of wet, almost oatmeal-y brown bready character. That sits above that bread crusty layer, and that's really nice how that pieces together. On top of that, you start to get, on top of that kind of oatmeal-y layer, oatmeal brown bready sort of layer, you get a white bready layer, which is quite nice too. So yeah, above the brown bready layer, it's kind of white bready, and I'll point out that both of these bready layers are like quite, they're actually quite dense and quite wet and quite sweet. And that's really interesting for me. The sort of oaty character that I was picking out of this beer before in the aroma, I don't think that exists too much in this one. I really don't think there's too much in the way of an oaty character. It is more a barley malt leaning beer, this one. But again, I think some of the sweetness is potentially coming from the fact that it's American malts in here rather than European malts. So yeah, brown bread, white bread. Above that, you do get a little bit of a, above the bready character, you get a little bit of a circle in the middle of your palate, and the circle is quite interesting because it has a wee touch of like a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch note to it. So there's maybe a very slight like toasty bread and butter, brown sugary sort of base there. So as I say, that circle in the middle of your palate, the base layer is that kind of toasty bread and buttery bread. Then you've got a wee bit of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. So yeah, there's a wee bit of a Werther's Original butter candy butterscotchy sort of thing going on. And yeah, I think on top of that, you do get a little bit in the dead centre of your palate. There's a little bit of like a fudgy, sweet caramel note there. So yeah, you have this circling on your palate, toasty underneath, Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, and then straight up like fudge, sweet caramel in the middle of your palate. And I think that covers the middle third of your tongue in this one. It's really interesting how this goes together. As I say, it's quite a simple beer, but it does take the flavours a little bit of time to just kind of evolve on the palate. But I think at this point we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the tongue. So let's have a little look at the the back third of the palate then with this one. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate then. And remember that general trend with your palate that sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So in that border region you've got a little bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and then in the base of that back third of your palate you've got the kind of bread crusty character in there, which feels a little bit drier. You've almost got a little bit of an almost kind of Jacob's cream cracker type quality sitting on top of that. And again, these in the back third of the palate flavours are always going to be a little bit drier. But you can feel the brown bready layer in there, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, a bit taller as well. Same with the white bready layer that sits above that, a little bit taller and more airy, which I do quite like. And then on top of that, you have, on top of all of that, you can feel some of the drier brown sugary aspects just kind of creeping over the top there, which is nice. So the brown sugary notes sitting on top of that back third of the palate, they're more like Werther's Original butter candy kind of notes, but a little bit more toasty and dry. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice in this one. Above everything else on that back third of the palate, you've got that lovely, yeasty character coming out of the beer. So the yeast for me has this like dense, doughy, brown bready sort of character to it, and I do find that really quite interesting. That doughy, dense, brown bready note there. It's really quite sweet actually, and it's almost wrapped in a little bit of a kind of woody, crackery character, and then you get wholemeal around it. So yeah, the yeasty character, dense, doughy brown bread, cracker and wood, then a sort of honeycomb note, and definitely that back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. At that, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. So on the hoppy side of things then, from tasting this beer, I think the hoppy side of this beer, I think there might be a little bit of hop in this one, but if there is, I'm sort of 75% saying there's no hop in this, 25% thinking there might be a very little bit of hop in this. The hoppy side of this beer is very minimal if it's there. I think a lot of the flavours that I'm getting out of this might be placebo, but in the back corners of the palate there's a little bit of smooth earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and then as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, it's got a little bit more of kind of smooth but very slightly spicy kind of floral aromaticity. So that's really interesting. So yeah, a little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of this one, which I think is really nice. Round the front curve of your palate, you've got a little touch of a grassy note to this one, but as I say, the sides of your palate are very, very smooth in this beer and almost kind of oily and wet, and to me that's usually an indicator that there's not hops in the beer. But as I say, there's just that little touch of floral character and that little bit of zestiness, which makes me wonder, is there a little bit of like Tet Nang or something like that in here, Hallertauer Tet Nang? Because the other thing you have to remember is that when you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it's always going to suppress the green component of the beer a little bit and get rid of the bitterness. So that's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, on the hoppy or on the fruity side of this beer, then I think we should move on to that. So front third of your palate, the border region between between front and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of that brown bread in there again, and the white bread on top, and the base of that front third of your palate. There's a little bit of bready character in there, a little bit of that bread crust, the wholemeal brown bread on top, the white bready character in there. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. I suspect that there might well be a little bit of Amarillo in this one. Mosaic wouldn't surprise me either. You've got Azaka, Pacifica, Nectaron these days. There's a whole, and Mandarina Bavaria is another one as well from Germany. There are so many hops you could put in this beer to give you that kind of orangey flavour, and it wouldn't surprise me if they've used a little bit of like dry hopping with this one. But as I say, I think there's quite a lot of adjunct in this one. It really does come across as more of a kind of candy sour rather than anything else. But let's just focus on the fruity part of that front third of your palate then. But it's quite straightforward, as I say. So for me, like, it's a very juicy, it's a very like candied orange character that comes out of this one, which is exactly what you'd expect. There are little hints of like an apricot, papaya dryness in that middle of the front third of your palate, but overwhelmingly, it's like a candied orange sort of Fanta type flavour that you get out of this one, which really isn't a surprise. And you can feel some of I think there's a bit of orange peel and juicy orange and stuff in this, because you can feel that just pushing away. You can feel the front curve of your tongue is a lot wetter and things, which is usually an indicator of adjuncts, fruity adjuncts being added into the beer. But overall, as I say, this beer is really nice, quite simple in terms of its flavour profile, but you can't knock it. And if this one does fit into the candy sour style category, this would make me rethink a little bit about that style, because the ones I tried from Finland I wasn't a great fan of. They were just too sweet. This one's got a bit more balance to it between the barley malt and the sweeter side of things. So yeah, as I say, I think this beer is one that kind of straddles the line between being a kettle sour and a candy sour, but it works and it's very nice. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. This beer is as good as what I've had from the likes of Vault City and Holy Goat and the other the breweries in Sweden that are doing sour beers. So I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section. Let's just round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, mouthfeel wise, this beer is quite, it's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum. So I'd call it mid-bodied, but for a sour beer, especially like a sort of kettle candy sour, I think this one's a bit more oily and slick. It feels a little bit heavier. So that's a fair statement to make as well. But carbonation has a wee bit of crispness to it. As I say, the whole feel of the beer is quite oily and slick. It finds its style category somewhere between the kettle and candy sour category, I would say. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is probably 0 calculated IBUs, and there's maybe about 5 IBUs in terms of perceived bitterness. But yeah, it's got a little bit of dryness into the aftertaste. The malt base, as we said, it's quite bread crusty and kind of almost smooth and woody and vanilla into the aftertaste, so you do get a bit of that sweet dryness out of it. Bit of bready character in there, a bit of sweetness on top, and then you've got all these kind of candied fruity characters into the aftertaste, and just a little bit of that kind of grassy note coming out of it. But all in all, a really, really nice beer, this one, and I certainly don't regret trying it. I'm going to enjoy kind of sipping on the rest of this as the afternoon goes on. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. I'm really glad that I got to do a review of this. So this was the Who Loves Orange Soda. As I say, everyone knows Kel loves orange soda. A 6% sour ale with oranges from Tripping Animals Brewing Company in Doral near Miami in Florida in the southeastern US. I'm really glad I got to cover this brewery, because these guys have been doing some very, very good stuff over the last wee while, from what I understand. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Tripping Animals Brewing Company as well. And we'll see about returning to these guys at some point in the future. Hopefully we can try one of their IPAs and one of their lagers at some stage. And maybe I can get down to Florida and have a wee look at their tap room and things. That would be pretty awesome to do. But until then, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, and I will see you guys in the next review. Big shout out as well to Massive Matt for making this review possible. Check out the link to his channel in the video description below, and I'll see you soon. Ciao just now.